allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all.
Welcome to our meeting. And now we'll have the swearing in of the new school committee member, Jim Arruda.
Mrs. Null.
Say it out. I
I, James Arruda,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
enforce, and abide
enforce, and abide
by the Constitution and laws
by the Constitution and laws
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and of the state of Rhode Island,
and of the state of Rhode Island,
that I will in all respects
that I will in all respects
observe the provisions of the Charter
observe the provisions of the Charter
and ordinances of the town of Tiverton,
and ordinances of the town of Tiverton,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
as a Tiverton School Committee member
as a Tiverton School Committee member
for the town of Tiverton,
for the town of Tiverton.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, sir.
And now I'll have the election of the legislative committee member. Carol?
Well, I think I would like to nominate Jim Arruda then.
There we go. Back to the races.
Do I have a second? Do you have any questions? No? Yeah?
Actually, what is that?
Mr. Eric?
It's a committee of one, and it's to just kind of monitor the different legislation that's at the General Assembly regarding anything that's pertinent to us, education, that sort of stuff.
And Tim definitely will send it all to you.
And the RIAS,
Yeah.
being a member of this school committee association, Tim sends it to you anyway, automatically, so you don't really have to
You don't have to do it, yeah. You just,
because we use that information for basis for resolutions or, to take a stand on a certain position or whatever. It's really not too bad. And then if we need to testify, besides Mrs. Black, it's always good to have a couple members to go before this, the representing the state house. That's in a nutshell.
all those in favor? Thank you. Consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions on that? All those in favor? Mr. Eric?
Middle school custodian Thomas Cox, girls JV softball coach Rachel Andrews.
Okay, is there any correspondence? No? Okay, budget, 2015-16 budget.
It's still, it's going to be submitted to the voters, the FTR.
But there's an alternate budget.
Yes, there is. Want me to talk about it? Oh, okay. An alternate
important to review the timeline right now.
Right, and Mrs. Melton, in the first week of May, there's a hearing on the budget proposals that it's open to the public. Although nothing can be changed under the language under the charter, it does give people an opportunity to ask questions about the town's budget and the school department's budget in an open forum setting. And then on May 16th, there'll be a town referendum. The FTR will be held. There'll only be one voting place. I'll be here at the high school, and it's all day. That's a change since I used to have different polling places throughout the town, but that was changed a little while back. And there is an alternate budget that's been proposed. It passed. It proposes to cut the school side of the budget by $126,000, which is the equivalent, even though they just cut a dollar amount, it's the amount that we put aside for all-day kindergarten. It's matched dollar for dollar after we take away state aid and things like that. So it has a significant, or could have a significant impact on our program for next year if it's passed.
We probably also should mention the grant that we're potentially going to receive for implementing All-Day K next year. Oh, I'm sorry, all right.
Excuse me.
And it also cut the town side and
At the
One
town
down.
side, about 230,000, 235, I believe, and another 300,000 out of the
General fund, yeah.
I was going to mention under reports and announcements, but it's probably best to fit under old business. We received our transportation bids yesterday, the East Bay group that went out together, and unfortunately, there's a significant increase even on the lowest bid. So in addition to the little hole we had kind of poked in our budget with our health insurance renewal, that was around $175,000, which if the committee remembers, we were going to cover through the funds that we had on reserve at the trust. I'm estimating that the increase over what we had put in the budget is probably over $240,000. So, fortunately, we have our fund balance that could potentially cover that and not alter what our request for our 2016 budget is, but I just wanted to bring that to the school committee's attention. The group has hired a consultant to lead us through this process, and he's going to be putting together and tabulating the results for us, and ultimately, the committee would have to vote on awarding the contract, but I just wanted to give a heads up to the committee. That's most likely coming in the next meeting or two.
And this was transportation, you said?
Yes.
And that's for all of our students?
Correct.
Regular and special ed transportation?
SPED is covered by the state
Special ed
contract,
by the state.
so it would be regular ed transportation exclusive of SPED.
It does include out-of-district transportation.
Correct. And the positive on this is we possibly would be requiring a little less transportation if we do all-day K. That was one of the eliminations, the midday bus run.
The middle of the day.
So if there's any positive in it, it would be
So
that.
a $240,000 increase?
Correct.
So can you explain to me how they can get away with that?
Well, unfortunately, the potential bidder pool is very limited in the area, and we tried, one of the motivations of hiring a consultant was to try to gather as many potential bidders and spread our RFP out as widely as possible. Unfortunately, 3 bus companies showed up at the bid opening, and only 2 had prepared a bid, and the lower of the 2 is still a significant increase
This
over...
is the lower of the two?
Yes.
And everybody that was in the bid with us received similar increases. We weren't a standalone.
No, I know.
And the point I think Doug's trying to make is that, again, we talked about this ad nauseum, but because of the early timeline to get everything in and finalized, you have these issues out there for both the municipal and the town's school department that aren't finalized, by...
In December, when we put the budget
by
together.
December, and then the deadline, I think, is second week in April or whatever before we can make a change. So that's a significant change to our budget, but it would be even more significant if we were to receive a reduction in our request that we've already put in.
Now, if everyone remembers, at the last, when we had financial town meetings, we could meet that morning, and we did meet that morning and change our budget if we received new information that we're doing now. And sometimes the budget committee would ask us, could we take something off to make it better or whatever it was. And I remember times when we had an emergency meeting the morning before that Saturday afternoon. And so was one of our complaints with this. Everything had to be in so early, we really didn't have firm numbers. And now we're getting them, and they're not good.
Right, and that, the town runs into the same issue
Oh, they
with
do,
insurance
yeah.
and other items.
Yeah, the town administrator was explaining that last night at his meeting about the health numbers and all that. Okay, just so as long as we know that all that's coming.
And what I would recommend is on our next agenda, that we talk about specifically what the impact will be if the petitioner's budget's approved, what it means to us.
Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. So we'll move on to discussion possible vote of the school calendar. Mr. Arick?
Yep, per our last meeting, we had a discussion. We did talk about, and was approved, altering the February break, that we would just have 2 days. One would be a holiday on the Monday, the 15th, and then the next day on the 16th would be a professional development day for teachers, but no school for students, and then we'd have school the rest of that week. I provided, per our conversation, 3 different drafts, which reflect the responses to our survey that we sent parents. Draft 1 reflects what if the calendar would look like if we had a end of March spring break. Draft 2 is the first week in April, and then the 3rd would be our normal April vacation break. Just to remind the committee, when we surveyed our parents and our teachers, the top choice was draft 1, and the second choice was draft 2. But the issue with having it at the end of March is that park testing is still going on, or at least it was this year. So to try to avoid any conflict with the testing schedule, I would ask the committee to approve the second option, which would be vacation the first week in April, and that's based on the input that we received from our parents and our teachers.
I do think it's a good idea to finish up the park testing before the kids go home
Yeah, definitely.
for a week off, rather than having them 10 days off and then coming
no,
back and
that's right.
trying to perform at their peak.
That would-
Right, because we have the there's a lot of talk about having just one testing cycle, but again, that's just speculation at this point. We have to go with the best information we have right now. And that's the assumption that there'll still be 2 testing windows.
And we can change this if after a
Oh,
year
we can
the
modify it,
testing
absolutely.
schedule
Right.
changes, or we find after
Absolutely.
trying it,
We can
parents and teachers feel it would be better in a different
Agreed.
time slot.
Okay, do I have a motion then?
I'll make a motion to approve the school calendar for next year with spring vacation occurring the first week in April.
Do I have a second? For discussion? Questions? Dr. Larkin?
So we're approving draft 2.
Yes.
Questions, though?
No questions. Anybody else have any questions? No? All those in favor?
Thank you.
Next one we have is teacher displacements.
Yes, as a result of the decisions we made earlier in the budget cycle to reallocate our resources, it requires us to move people to different teaching assignments, which led to 4 teacher displacement letters, which you have before you, and unfortunately 1 layoff letter as a result of...
So the others will just be moving around?
The others, the 4 displacements are because they're moving from one position to another. They're still full-time employees.
Okay.
And because, as a result of that change, because we cut a position, so that's what the layoff letter represents.
Okay. So do I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to approve the teacher displacement layoff notices.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Thank you.
Now, early release.
Yes, annually, Mr. Vizek couldn't make it tonight, but you have this request before you, which I'm recommending. Mr. Forrest, who's the senior project coordinator, makes this request annually that we have a half-day release day so the students can do their senior projects in front of the judging panels.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for a half-day at the high school for senior project presentations.
Questions? No. All
And
those
that day would be May 20th, Wednesday, May 20th.
All those in favor? Okay, but now we have a full-day kindergarten startup.
Well, that's Amy to just briefly explain. This is the grant that we applied for all-day kid.
So in February, all of the teachers at the elementary level, all of our staff, actually gave input to Miss Blaze, a former kindergarten teacher, about what best practice would be, and we applied for this grant. I wrote the grant application, and it was approved. As you see, you have that letter. It would be contingent, of course, of receiving this $40,000 for the extension of kindergarten would be contingent upon the budget passing, and so we would have a lot of work to do beginning, hopefully, after May 16th, with the funds needing to be expended by the end of June. The grant, again, for $40,000 supports training in extending the learning, materials, software, hardware, and some updates to furniture as well, if needed, and all based on what the teachers recommend for the
And it
students.
goes beyond what we've already budgeted, so it's not, it's not replicating what we're asking for. It's a supplement. Yeah. And again, it's important to note that the state's willing to give us $40,000, if we approve all-day K. It's also important to note that in 2016, by August of 2016, the governor's proposing that any district that does not have all-day K loses its state aid.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's close to $6 million.
And that's close to $6 million. So whether that passes or not, it's on the table right now, that if districts don't, she's pushing the all-day initiative, and that's a big step.
Well, it's indicative of really how critically important
Yes, absolutely.
all-day K is now for students.
Now, obviously, it's open to the General Assembly, but that is what the governor has on the table. It's important that, our residents know that.
So we'll take a vote on this grant
To accept it.
to accept.
Contingent upon.
Yeah. Budget. Motion.
Make a motion to accept the grant.
Second.
Any questions about that one? No? All those in favor? Thank you. Now we'll have the school committee resolution. Mr. Rivett?
Yeah, Mrs. Black asked that we place this item on the agenda in response, for your consideration, in response to our neighbor to the west, across the bridge. Their town council approved, I believe it was a resolution, to go to their General Assembly reps to ask that school departments' surpluses can be taken by the town. Now, as you know, we had a long, drawn-out issue for a couple of years over that very question, and was upheld that, that's the law and that can't happen. So, I think it's something where we as a committee, you as the committee, might want to take a stand so we can let our reps, they're the same ones, in many cases, to say, well, while that, Portsmouth's town council may support it, we don't. We want to keep the laws as is.
And when Portsmouth passed this, Representative Edwards called me and asked me to have us please do this so he'd have something to present to his colleagues to say that he doesn't support this and neither does his town. And Portsmouth Town School Committee also passed one. So that was good.
And I think it's important to note that funding of capital improvements is handled very differently in Portsmouth.
Absolutely.
We use and rely on our general reserve funds to fund many of our capital improvements, whereas the Portsmouth School Committee has a whole separate line or process
They have warrants that the town pays for.
to approve capital requests. So unlike us, they don't rely on general reserves for capital improvements. This would hit us particularly hard.
Absolutely.
I think in light of the bad news that we received this evening regarding some of the unanticipated expenditures, it would lessen our flexibility with being able to handle something like that without having to make mid-year cuts or revise our budget very late in the process as well.
And of course, we have the facilities issue.
Yeah.
That we still need to meet with the, once the budget's settled, to meet with the town council and the budget committee to go over the findings and how we address that as, moving forward. So we need, again, for more flexibility, as Carol mentioned, we need some of those funds. We've already earmarked $250,000 of our fund balance for that. So our use of the fund balance is different than Portsmouth, maybe different than other districts, and we rely more heavily on the capital end.
And I think we've often heard from Tiverton residents that they appreciate and prefer that we fund as many capital improvements as we can through carefully saving and setting aside small amounts over several years, rather than coming to the town for a bond every time.
Well, the most recent example is the wastewater treatment facility that we, built for $700,000 with our carry forward funds.
With no additional appropriation.
With no additional funds.
And that was
from the
a
community.
sizable investment.
It worked. I mean, we have a track record to show that it does, it works.
And Mr. Perry, who was the chairman of the Budget Committee, and Mrs. Aruda back there always encouraged us to do exactly that. We had put $400 aside for that. Then we got information that it was going to cost more, so we kept putting it aside, even though we were criticized, and now everybody's happy that we had that money, because otherwise it would have had to be out of the general fund or from a supplemental tax bill, something, because 3 schools would have had to close. It was health and safety. There was no question that it had to be done, and DEM was demanding it, so. So do I have a motion for the resolution?
I make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor? And we'll send it along to our reps and everybody, okay, Elaine? I'll sign one for you and we can put that on. Thank you. Now we'll have the home teaching request.
Yeah, I'm
Mr.
asking the
Rivett.
committee to approve the homeschooling request that I had before.
Do I have a motion?
Make,
With the home teaching request.
second.
All those in favor? Okay. Now we'll have the health and wellness. We just had a meeting, and the state mandates that we have quarterly meetings, and we're glad that we did that because they came down to audit our books, and they wanted the minutes and the everything else of our meetings, and we handed them right over to them very nicely. And so we had a good meeting tonight, and a lot of community members were there, and representatives from the trust came to give us opportunities of things available to us through the trust and through Blue Cross. So the school nurses are going to work on that with Amy and Al, so thank you very much. It was a very good meeting. Okay.
I believe Mrs. Wardell has an announcement. I don't know about the other principals.
First is, during park administration, we were visited by and monitored by Clyde during the first day of park administration to see if we were following all of the ride protocols. And we received a very nice email, follow-up email from Kate Schultz from RIDE who went to visit, and she said that all the park testing security procedures are being followed. Students and teachers both appear to have been adequately prepared for the test, for the assessment, and this accomplishment is definitely attributed to the staff and leadership at the school. So we wanted to share that, and we did share that with our parents and our families and our staff. So it was very nice to receive such good feedback from RIDE on how we prepared.
And RIDE randomly picks schools. Sure.
Thank you.
And then I have
I would assume because it was a performance school, I don't know. Randomness.
And the second announcement is on Friday morning, April 17th, Barton School will be welcoming Tiverton town leaders to our school to read to our students for our annual reading week. And we had a very nice response. Some of the readers will be School Superintendent Rearick. We have some school committee members, our Vice Chair, Mrs. Herman, and our school committee member, Dr. Larkin. First Student Bus Company Dispatcher, Mrs. Pacheco, and Location Manager, Mrs. Del Toro. Chartwell School Lunch Nutritionist, Mrs. Roberts. Tiverton Police, Lieutenant Miguel. The Director of Tiverton Public Works, Mr. Bellucci. And we'd also like to welcome, if anyone else would like to be a guest reader for Friday morning, please feel free to contact our school. And with the valid Rhode Island BCI, we would be happy to include you in our celebration.
Thank you, that would be wonderful.
I'm a little concerned though, because it's a reading day and volunteer. I asked Mrs. Wardell, well, what book am I going to be reading? She goes, it's a picture book.
You have to go to your home library like I did, Mr. Rearick, and pick one of your family favorites.
I don't know if that's indictment on myself.
I personally will read. Don't worry.
Anybody else have anything?
Just briefly, Mrs. Black, along the theme of RIDE and audits, as you mentioned, the school lunch audit came in a few weeks ago, and they do a substantial test of our free and reduced lunch eligibility process, and I'm pleased to report, I think they picked over 200 samples, and we had one exception. So our process was working very well, so thanks to our staff in the admin office. I've got to respond to a letter on their finding in the next couple of weeks. We also had the Department of Health come in to do their, I think it's every 3 years they come in and do an asbestos review. They had a couple of administrative concerns about our logbook and minor items, which I'm going to respond to, but I think most of that was due to the transition with our new facilities director. Our audits have been received by the state. We received correspondence acknowledging that. We received a management letter from our past year audit, which I'll share with the committee at the next meeting. So I think that's all I had.
Thank you, thank you. Anything else? Okay. Okay,
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
all those in favor? Okay, that's it.